good afternoon to everybody. Welcome, first of all, and thank you all very much for joining the Empowering Agile Fireside Chat in the middle of August. Today, we will be talking about agility in the telco industry. The industry actually right now is one of the most dynamic industries and sectors. And because of the unmitigating circumstances that we're all facing today, and with the global push to digitalization, with remote work, digital education, online shopping, entertainment, generally new technology possibilities, and just like the really high level of dependence and the new innovations in connectivity, make this actually a very interesting industry in which to talk about the context of agility. So what we'd like to achieve today is to actually share insights from inside of the industry, which we do believe will be valuable to a lot of different industries as well. So welcome again. My name is Joanna Backus. I am the managing partner of LHBS Consulting in Berlin. And I'm very happy today to be joined by Fred Mahringer of A1 Austria, the country's leading convergent telco provider. Hello, Fred.
Hi.
Hello. Fred actually led the Agile Transformation Initiative at A1 and is currently heading up the HR department in the Vienna headquarters, which I believe is a role uniquely suited for enabling agility and agile transformation, and it's very much a people mindset. Also very lucky to have with us today Tamás Kocsis of Vodafone. Tamás leads the digital transformation at Vodafone Hungary. What is kind of interesting is that we do know that Vodafone has been launching agility as a way of working across its global footprint. Before we start, we just wanted to give you a little bit of a background about what is Empowering Agile. Empowering Agile is actually a platform that includes conferences, meetups, publications, and it's a place where practitioners of agility share insights and learnings about implementing agile methodologies across business operations in their organizations. The platform is actually founded on two central themes. One being that agility is a powerful mindset and a practice along many areas of business operations, far beyond IT. And it's still very surprising, I believe, to many organizations in the number of different ways that it can be applied to make organizations more efficient across the board, also more effective and more innovative. The second cornerstone of Empowering Agile, the goal is actually of the platform not to teach about agility, but rather share from practitioners real experiences, sometimes good, sometimes bad, in implementing agile practices throughout the organization. We actually kicked off the Empowering Agile in partnership with A1, specifically with Fred in Vienna in March of 2019, where we actually had, we were very lucky to have an incredible lineup of speakers across a very diverse range of industries, retail, automotive, telco, financial services. And now, as necessity becomes the mother of invention, we've continued through virtual meetups and chats like this. In the chat, check out empoweringagile.com. It has the latest happenings, events, and news. I will start the discussion today with Fred and Tamás, who will share their ideas and experiences, and then we will take questions from the audience. So as questions pop into your head, do please post them in the Q&A space of the Zoom. And after our initial conversation, which will last about 20-25 minutes, we will then take questions from the audience to Tamás and Fred at the end of the session. Just one more little detail, we would like to give everyone a heads up. The session will be recorded and streamed to YouTube and LinkedIn. So we just wanted the audience to be aware of that. So let's get started. Thank you again, Tamás. You're obviously zooming in from a holiday location. So thank you very much for taking the time. I think from your backdrop, everybody kind of wishes they were there. And thank you again, Fred, from joining us. And let's just get to the point then and start our discussion going. I guess my first question to each of you, maybe one at a time, is that why Agile? What are the key areas of your business that you believe agility will have a very positive impact, and why? And I would start maybe with Tamás.
Hi everyone, and really excuse me for the background. That's the way it is. So, but I guess it's nice to spend the evening like that with you guys. So I really don't mind it. Okay, so why agile? I mean, in Vodafone, it's not really mainly or only about agile, but what we are looking for is rather how to become, let's say, digital first, or make sure that we also have a organization that really supports digital channels overall, including sales, care, and also back office processes. So we are looking at this whole topic from a let's say resource and skill perspective, and we wanted to set up an organization where all the teams have all the relevant, let's say, digital skills that they would need to fulfill their mission. And of course, agile, since we do have multifunctional teams, is I think the best approach to kind of fit something like that. And then of course, if I look at the whole, let's say, mission or strategy with becoming digital first or becoming agile, is really having the customer in the center of everything we do. And it's the easiest way to reflect on changing customer needs, and also both external and internal needs. I think the best approach is the agile way of working, when we are not really looking at the next 2 or 3 years ahead and developing or changing things based on that, but rather try to understand how we can embrace customer feedback, iterate immediately based on that feedback, and really start working in rather small increments and see what the actual impact is, than really having like 1.5 years long, let's say, waterfall projects. So it's let's say halfway through how we as Vodafone become a truly digital organization, and also how we can really support customers in making sure that we deliver the right solution. And there seems to be a great fit of those two in Agile.
Do you think that agility is especially well applied in the digital sphere? Or do you think that it could play a role also like in other aspects of the company?
I mean, at Vodafone, we had an incremental approach. So the first thing we started to, let's say, develop or manage in Agile was the digital channels. That's, I think, where you can gather customer feedback in the easiest way, and also be really like fast on releasing and really understanding what the impact of your release or development was. But today we already see that there is a huge benefit in Agile also in, let's say, not so digital channels, let's say for retail, for example, but also in back office processes. So I wouldn't say that it only applies to digital channels, or I wouldn't even say that it only applies to customer facing channels, but definitely it's much easier to start with those.
Yeah, very, very good point. Very good point. It does fit in surprising areas of business. And Fred, at A1, what was the reasoning behind implementing Agile? I know the stages that you're at are also quite advanced in terms of scalability, but where did you want to see the biggest benefits, let's say?
First of all, we have to understand, and I think we understood that the telecom market in Austria, and I think in many markets, is very, very specific. Yeah, we can see a really high competition on the market, new entrants, and especially that these entrants are coming not from our industry, they are coming from other industries, and this is really a challenging situation for us as telecom operators. And the Austrian market is a little bit, in addition, specific. I think we have a high quality market, but a low cost market. So for the customer, it's the best place for telecommunications, or one of the best places in Europe, not only for holidays, but also for telecommunications is Austria, a high quality and low cost. And this is really a challenge for an operator like A1 here in Austria, and also in other areas where in our footprint. Why Agile? Why we do believe that Agile makes sense in our industry and also in our companies? We believe that we bring more customer focus in our organization. We also believe that we can speed up how to bring and in which time we bring products to the market, solutions to the market, to tackle time to market. What we also can see and what we also can measure is that increase this agile methodologies increases the employee engagement. And at the end of the day, we also believe that these frameworks can help us to reduce the costs. So this is a very good mixture, which makes sense in our industry and in our very specific situation. And we started also like Vodafone Hungary in the digital business area. I think this is we can see this also in many other companies to start in this area. We use the principles in innovation, but we can see different developments. Also, as Tamás mentioned, we had set up our procurement department in this way. On these principles. Now our accounting department is still in this process to bring this in these frameworks, also from an organizational framework. And we are, I'm sure, and we are really committed to go this way further step by step. So this is the actual situation here in A1.
It's really fascinating with the integration of agility in procurement. I think even any company practicing agility for efficiency, for innovation would be kind of like, really, procurement? Okay, never really thought that happening, but it's really fascinating how efficiency, effectiveness can be gained. And you mentioned time to market.
Maybe you can share afterwards. McKinsey has published a white paper on this a few days ago, and I was also, there's my invitation to share this experience with all the guys here. What is going on in these areas? It's also fascinating for me. Very interesting.
I think we're going to put it in the chat. That was really a fascinating article in McKinsey. Really fascinating. In terms of like getting things off the ground, because we also talk to different organizations, and it's also, a question of how do I start? There's a lot of questions about, do we go big bang? Do we just set up a few teams and apply agility to agility and then, learn as we go along? But how did it start in your organizations? Fred, maybe we'll start with you. Was it just a small experimental number of teams? And
it was only one project. We started with one project to see these quick wins, to understand how these things play together, which competencies do we need. We started with the product development in our smart home business. This was only one team and only one product. And in parallel, we started a more radical approach to start with teams in the digital business, and afterwards, we started this discussion about scaling. Actually, we run in the digital business 3 tribes. We use this more or less Spotify model with 3 tribes and around 10 teams, and we have learned a lot. So a key learning from our side is also this better done than perfect. So start fast, learn fast, and we started with one project. This was our approach. No scaling framework, only one project.
And how is the pace of, let's say, scaling going for Vodafone?
Okay.
We basically had a very similar approach to what Fred has just explained. So we also started with 1 or 2 squads, which were basically focused on digital customer-facing channels. It was actually a web shop and a portal squad that we started with, and they were not even like entirely in-source. So we were still using external developers. We also experienced how much difference it makes to have in-source let's say, resources sitting within squads, but really these were the first steps. Then we also started using Agile in other areas in digital, so for the My Vodafone application, and also for online sales, online communication. And besides that, it was really interesting that we didn't even, let's say, set up a whole tribe in digital, but started already launching squads in other business units within Vodafone Hungary. Happy, for example, was one of them, which was a, let's say, customer enlightenment or loyalty type of squad. At least the mission was about this, which was really something totally different than what we have done with the other squads. So we also wanted to start experiment with other, let's say, areas for Agile, not only digital developments, but at least starting to understand what impact it can have on more, let's say, core business areas. And then from that, we started becoming a tribe in digital. And then really squads started to pop up earlier than we have actually agreed that we are going to scale Agile within Vodafone Hungary. And now we are more looking at setting up tribes in business units that are really end-to-end in terms of a broader mission, not only looking at squads. But I truly believe that the iterative or the Agile approach is a good approach to implementing scaled Agile. So we could already see that just taking all the learnings that we have, let's say we had for the past, let's say 6, 7, 8 months, and taking all that learnings and using that as we implement or start a new squad, it was extremely helpful. So you could already see the difference in velocity or velocity increase at those squads who already started like 6, 7, 8 months later, and comparing it to what we have experienced in really the early days.
Just maybe a question to both of you. Do you personally, and from your experiences, believe that scaling too fast can be problematic or a potential danger? Because there's questions about, do we go big bang or do we kind of go through it in a slower process?
For us, it was the right way to do this in this more incremental steps, because I always say our company is more a freestyle company. We are not so willing and able to follow processes. And when you try to scale with a framework like SAFe or these things, you have to do this in a very consequent way. Otherwise, you will fail. So for our culture, for our company, for our business, I think it was the right approach. And we have to learn that we learned that Agile is much about discipline. It's much about consequence. It's much about focus. But I think this would not be able if we would start with a big bang model. Yeah, this is my perspective. Yeah.
It's about learning as well.
Yeah,
I just wanted to clarify one thing, because I already see a question in the Q&A, and I would not like to confuse the audience. There's a point that somebody is making about confusing agility and agile way of working. If I've created that confusion, I apologize. I use the two words intermittently. So agility, agile way of working for me is the same thing. So I just wanted to clarify that up. And we are talking about, like, in the context of, agile is not a framework. Could be, applied with a collection of tools, but I think we all agree we're basically talking about customer involvement, experiments, iterations as kind of way of working to develop efficiency, effectiveness, innovations, and whatever. With that in mind, when setting up agile teams, what for you are critical skills and critical ways of thinking that will make the teams more successful? So what kind of mindset and maybe tool set do we want to ensure that agile teams kind of like, absorb, take in, and utilize in their daily work? Let's start with Tamás, maybe.
Okay, so there is overall, I think, two skills that apply to all of the, let's say, agile teams, which are, at least this is my experience, which are really understanding customer feedback and making sure that I have tools that I can use to listen to my customers, involve them in the whole process. Things like service design, for example. I think that's super important for the whole team to not only understand the tools, but really have a mindset that makes them want to understand the customers. And then the other, which is just as important as the first one, is the ability to experiment, which is not only about listening, but just having a mindset where you accept the fact that most of the time or some of the time you have assumptions, and you can approach those assumptions by really understanding how you are going to validate or invalidate them and really setting up experiments. If you are not good at either listening to your customers, I don't care if it's through data or through, let's say, interviews, and if you are not able to set up experiments and at the end decide if they were successful or successful, then you are not, I think, going to be able to improve from, let's say, sprint to sprint or from 1 month to the other. This will, and overall, let's say the agile way of working will make you faster and go live with solutions that don't really answer customer need in a faster pace. But the agile way of working does not really teach you how to become better in listening to your customers and really understanding what the needs are. So for me, these are the most critical ones if I want to have like a holistic approach beside all the regular, let's say, agile related skills.
Yeah, it can be a mind shift too. It's very much, I find that as well. It's attitudinal. It's the willingness also, I think, to work in uncertain contexts that you don't know what the outcomes are always going to be. So it's kind of like ongoing planning rather than having a master plan. Fred,
exactly.
in your
and also,
experience,
if I can have a comment on this one, this is much harder to, let's say, embrace and learn than everything else related to agile. So if this one is missing from the core, then what I have experienced, it's really, let's say, hard to make sure that these skills are there.
Fred, any experiences from your teams? What were kind of critical skills, mindsets that you found absolutely, let's say, game-changing in terms of adopting agile methodologies?
Nearly the same perspective as Tamás. There's often the question to me in our organization, what means agile at the end of the day? And I always say it's really simple. Yeah, it's about three things. Yeah, it's about customer centricity. Also, as Tamás mentioned, it's about employee centricity, and maybe it's the hardest thing. It's about to deliver continuously. And this is especially in a company, in a huge company, this is really a challenge to deliver an increment, a new software, a new feature, a new experience, whatever, each week. Each sprint and the thing, and this is a really new belief and also you need new processes, new software, new architecture to do this. Yeah. 3 years ago, we have half-yearly releases. Yeah, now we have to release in on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and so on. So customer centricity, employee centricity, and to deliver continuously. This is this key message what we always try to bring in the teams. And when we get better and better day by day, then this is the right way and a good progress. Yeah.
Very good point. The continuous release kind of mentality is also, you need to unlearn kind of more like different adopted ways of doing business. Let me ask you just one question regarding the context in which we're living. So just to see what's going on globally in the marketplace across all industries because of this extremely unfortunate and very tragic crisis. But what I've been kind of seeing is that companies that have, because it's a context in which you have suddenly very changing customer behaviors and maybe expectations. You need to rethink what your business model is suddenly, because if you can't run a retail operation, what are you going to do? If you're a restaurant, what are you going to do? So it's a different context of customer needs and behaviors. There's a lot of restrictions and limitations, and companies during COVID have either, I've seen, like accelerated their agile efforts or became agile accidentally. So just, because kind of like put into a corner where even without thinking that they're being agile, you had to rethink things really quickly. Everything from companies suddenly just shifting resources and really, really improving their e-commerce platforms, direct to home or direct to consumer services. I mean, we've seen ingenuity and just the ability to quickly pivot in the context from across the board. I mean, recently I read about strip clubs doing drive-throughs rather than in venue kind of. So companies are becoming agile, whether just because they have to, and rethinking business models and rethinking customer needs. Has this crisis affected how you're implementing agile in your respective companies? That would be the first question. And the second one would be whether in your companies or in other companies, during a crisis, people have to just be quick and readjust. Do you think that a lot of companies would go back to business as usual because now they're forced to be a little bit more agile, but then it'll be, yeah, okay, the crisis is over? So again, to pose the question, has the crisis actually accelerated the implementation of agile in the company or applied to different things? And is it something that you think is going to last? So, Fred?
Yeah, first of all, we can see that really good agile teams perform also during this crisis. And this is a very good message for us. We have one team or three teams up and running in the robotics area, and we can see their output. And we have learned they increased their output during this crisis, during the last 3 months. Yeah, so no negative impact from this area. One learning for me also is I always explained that really good agile teams have to work on site. Now I have learned that the remote is also possible. Yeah, and so I'm not sure about how it looks like this new normal. Yeah, but this would not be the old normal. Yeah, so in my understanding, we will see a mixture from on-site, from remote, and all these things. So on this team level, I see in the short term I cannot see any impact in our company. In the midterm, my understanding is that we have to find new ways of collaboration, new ways of work for these teams. But I think it's not necessary to do this in the HR department. This is done by the teams. Great teams find solutions for these challenges. And in the midterm, we will also see, as you mentioned before, Joanna, new business areas with huge challenges, but also possibilities for us as telecom operators. Yeah, so changing value streams, changing with new opportunities on the markets also for us. Yeah.
Yeah, a crisis can sometimes bring that.
Last time a colleague mentioned never waste a good crisis. Yeah. Yeah. This makes sense for me. Yeah.
Tamás, and at Vodafone, have you been pressured by quicker, let's say, pivots, turnaround times, reaction to market dynamics? And did this make people in the organization, maybe some disbelievers, say, hey, this way of thinking actually does work and help us overcome certain challenges?
Well, I would say that COVID had more of an impact on the backlogs than the whole approach to agile transformation. And of course, it was yet another evidence that if we have those, let's say, fully empowered end-to-end teams, then we can really turn things around overnight. So I think the main, let's say, difference was not even about the, let's say, speed of releases or development itself. What I saw was more about the speed of decision making, and this was, at least for me, the main learning, and what I really saw on the teams, that they were just like able to really make those decisions on the spot, and we were just saving days, if not weeks, on this one on its own. So if I want to look at the agile transformation itself, then I think it's an extremely sensitive organizational transformation. So for those companies who didn't start yet, I think it will be difficult, if not even painful, because you really need to make sure that the whole organization is understanding why you are doing this, what impact it will have on their lives, on their roles, on their career paths, which is, I think, just hard to do from a, let's say, remote location. And also establishing team dynamics for new teams is something that is extremely hard if you cannot like gather them on the spot. So what I saw also at Vodafone Hungary was that for those teams who were already working together for more than, let's say, 3 or 4 months, they were doing great also during COVID. For the teams who were actually just like starting to kick off and they were really in the, let's say, storming phase, it was something incredibly difficult to also come up to pace and have velocity. So in terms of, and I would also love to refer back to what Fred has said, I think collaboration, and especially remote collaboration for agile teams, is going to be the most critical item when it comes to the new norm and how we are going to work together in an agile setup as well. I think just team dynamics on its own is super important when it comes to agile teams, and also communication is something different than when you compare it to a let's say, classic hierarchical structure.
Thank you. Then before we go into the Q&A, if I could ask from each of you, if you had to give a colleague from another industry the killer tip for effective agile implementation, what would that be? Fred?
The killer tip is to kill the agile ways, to try to plan the full journey. Yeah, I'm so sure that you have to do this step by step. You have to do your own experiments, but never try to plan the whole journey.
Yeah, it's not exactly agile to do that, is it?
Yeah.
And Tamás, from your experiences, what's the one tip that you can share?
My tip would be, and I think it's related to leaders or management, would be to steer for output instead of activity. Mm-hmm. I think that's the only way to empower teams and make sure that they can just like go on with their missions and just go and live out to their full extent and really have impact.
Really good point. Really good point. So output oriented, giving teams goals, and this is the measure of success in building up the teams to actually deliver outputs, not just create inputs. And I think to Fred's point is very interesting, because I've seen that also across organizations, of trying to do the perfect planning for implementing agility. And that, yeah, I think you have to do agile to implement agile, and taking it a step-by-step process. And in the classic, agile way, learn as you go along, adapt, build, measure, learn. So thank you both again. If you could stay with us for a bit, we would like to take some questions from the audience. They are coming up in our Q&A. Okay. Sorry, bit of a tech glitch. One question, and I think this comes across a lot. How difficult is it, and what can one do to overcome a silo culture? And, there's conversations about this, and we talk about, waterfall versus agile, and, one being, and overcoming the silo culture, it's not an easy thing. I think there's a comfort zone also that people live with in knowing what I'm going to do every day, sticking to a certain function. Is there anything that you've done actually to be able to break that mindset in your companies? Fred, any kind of
yes, yes, of course. When you said agile teams, you skip the silos because you bring together the teams, yeah. But you have to be aware that you don't build another silos, yeah. A colleague mentioned some weeks ago that before we had department silos, and now we have product silos. So it's always the same. You have in a larger company, you always have to focus on several things. Yeah, you can do this with departments, and you can do this more on products, processes, whatever. And you have always to secure that that there's a good interaction, a good communication between these silos.
Is it still a challenge for you, Tamás, at Vodafone to kind of get away from the silo mentality and think about development in a different way?
I would say that it's an everyday challenge still, and that's something that we need to work on day by day. And really, communication is the key point to that. And really understanding, let's say, all the handover points between tribes and squads, because I mean, the more end-to-end a team is, it's much likelier to really end up in a silo, because they can just deliver whatever they want without really talking to anybody else within the organization. So it really is a question of communication, making sure that we have the right, let's say, forums in place. And it's also partly a governance and planning challenge. I mean, we need to understand that we are following the same strategy, and especially we need to understand that if we have an impact on any other team. So, I mean, governance still plays an important role also in an agile organization, but it's also important to understand that governance needs to change to support agile, but it's not going to be any less important.
Yeah, exactly. I think agile leadership is another conversation, I think, altogether. We have an audience member actually asking us about frameworks and whether you've considered using them, adapted them to your needs. And specifically, did you consider an evolution from the Spotify model to the LESS model, or the SAFE? I never know if it's SAFE or SAFE model. Were these models that you considered in terms of implementing, let's say, or scaling and the organization for Agile? Did you look at them for inspiration, or did you find it more useful to develop your own model? I know, Fred, that you've been working on various frameworks for quite a while. So Spotify, the LESS, or the SAFE framework?
Yes, of course, because the Spotify model is no scaling framework. You have to understand and have to learn how to handle the scaling problem in your organization. What we are doing is that we use this Spotify model on the squads and tribe model, and when we use several things from the SAFE framework, but we are not using the whole SAFE framework. From the SAFE framework, for one example is that we use everything about this portfolio planning. Yeah, from my understanding, there's a great framework in SAFE how to plan the portfolio, how to plan budgets and these things. And the second thing which we have implemented in our organization is this big room planning, or PI planning from the SAFE framework. We bring together all the teams on a quarterly basis, plan the next quarter with 100, 200 people in the room, and this makes really sense in our situation. Yeah, so we use not the whole framework, but we use the best things which match to our specific problems from these frameworks. So it's worth to use these frameworks, but be careful to implement the full framework. Yeah.
Yeah, it requires, every organization is a little bit different. And I think that is a danger. I've seen a lot of companies like, okay, let's go for the Spotify model or whatever. Tamás, has Vodafone experimented? I know, like I said, I know Vodafone is also kind of really trying to implement on a global level agile way of working. Are there frameworks that your teams find more useful, and how do you roll those out?
Yes, but we really have a similar approach to Fred and his organization. So, but I think it's important to understand, and no matter if it's come to structure or following a model of Spotify, and then looking at frameworks, taking frame and items of that. So I think it's important to understand and accept that you are going to have a starting point that you need to modify anyway at some point as you go along the journey. So we're also looking at Spotify, also looking at SAFe, then taking PI planning, for example, release train, and several items of that framework just to see if they work, and then we are not really afraid to modify them. So I don't think that you would find a framework that fits just perfectly. It's more important to understand what the starting point should be, and then being brave and start changing it if you need to.
Mm-hmm. It's a journey. I just want to clarify something for one of our audience members. I think she might have come in a little bit later. She just wanted to double check what organizations you're from. So to our listener, Tamás is from Vodafone Hungary, and Fred is from A1 Telekom Austria, which also is a company that has a footprint across Central and Eastern Europe. A fully convergent provider, but Fred is actually from the Vienna headquarters. A very interesting question. Fred, you touched upon agile methodology actually being adopted by procurement, which even for me was maybe the last thing that I would have thought of. But one of our listeners is asking about implementing agility in operation-heavy units, such as customer service, manual order entry sales. So these kind of very operational, with traditionally, I would say, labor intensive kind of operating models. Have you seen, I don't know, customers, besides doing things like chatbots or something, but have you seen or have had any experience in implementing agile way of working in things like the call center?
We think that in our organization, we see heavy agile areas and agile areas, and we also did several experiments for one example in the customer service area. But at the end of the day, this is a very functional, a very operational organization. But when we think about how to improve the way of working, how to improve the processes and everything in this area, also in customer service, then we use these agile principles, the agile methods, and everything. Also with this mindset, bring the value fast to the customer, to bring the customer in the focus, also our employees and all these things. So in my understanding, our customer service will not run really in an agile way in a squad or tribe model, but we will use a lot of these things for the mindset, and especially to improve these areas. This is my picture for an organization like customer service.
I think another interesting question, it's also an application to a completely different side of business. And it's a question to both of you, whether you're directly involved in it or you hear it in your organizations. Any plans to change your infrastructure department also to include to be agile as organizing unit? Infrastructure, I'm assuming here means network, or is that a place where you can actually practice agility? or agile methodologies. It's kind of like, it's kind of hard to experiment with fiber optics and bay towers on a scalable level. But any point of view on that, Tamás?
Yes, and especially I think when you are discussing network issues, for example. So on solving network issues and really like exploring them and trying to get to the root cause, I think there is there is room for agile. Not so much on let's say development or day-to-day operation, but also what we were looking at and are still looking at is making sure that we can, let's say, improve not only the network itself, but also how we communicate related to the issues that we have, for example, with the network, and how we actually get to the root cause of any network issue that we have. So there is definitely an agile approach, even if not the whole, let's say, infrastructure management and development can be done in an agile way.
I think that's kind of similar to what we were talking about customer service. So there you're kind of practicing process innovation, which would be problem solving as a process, and you could definitely apply agile there. Also a very interesting question. How do you, and I think here I like the word, it's not how do you convince or how do you align with, but how do you train senior and middle management to kind of get on board for agile transformation?
In our organization, the first step was a 2-day training for all our executives. And this was really interesting because some colleagues in the digital area, in IT, had seen a lot about agility and software development, but not in this area about product development and these things. So we started with this 2-day workshop for around 50 colleagues in our management team. I think this was very important. And in addition, we have several evangelists in our organizations which drive this whole development about agility in our organization. So it's for the majority of managers is more coaching from other colleagues, and also we implemented several agile coaches to help the managers, to help the middle management to find the right way how to handle agility in their departments.
A question from actually LinkedIn. It's a tough one to answer. So let's say, okay, we've met all our goals, agile organizations, customer-centric, design thinking oriented. We're getting stuff out to market faster. We're doing it with more resource optimization. We have engaged teams, faster, more innovative, experimental. We're done. What's next? So what could, I don't know if you have a crystal ball in front of you about what the next wave of management thinking would be. But is it something that you've ever pondered or contemplated? What's the next big thing after Agile?
I'm not sure if we are going to ever arrive to a situation where we would say that, okay, we are done here. But if that day would come, then I think we would be in a super happy place, and this would be the best, let's say, workplace in the world. But I'm pretty sure that also from a customer perspective, you would say that this is the best company I've ever been a customer of. So I can't wait the day, and I guess I'm going to take a month off.
Okay. It's also a really interesting question. What's the most surprising thing that failed, or the something that didn't go as intended at all, and it left an impression still on you and just kind of like surprised you, whether it's like, oh my God, how could this go wrong? Or what did we do here? Like, what kind of, let's say, where things kind of went unexpected that really surprised you?
In companies like A1, we always try to measure everything, yeah. And some things are really difficult to measure, yeah. So what is really the impact from our efforts in agility and all these things? And I'm always this is always a hard discussion. Show me the impact from Agile in the P&L. And things like this, yeah. This is really challenging for me, and also a little bit surprising that this discussion will never stop, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard somebody tell me one time, it's like, I don't want a minimum viable product. I want a maximum viable product. Tell me what this thing is going to look like in 7 years. And how much money is it going to bring immediately? Let's see what else we have here. Interesting. So this is also like, it kind of matches some of my personal experiences when I was working with organizations and agile teams, and how those teams are recruited and the expectations from the individuals, whether they're now part of an agile team or whether now they have like a coaching role. How important do you think it is for the engagement and the success to rethink a compensation model for teams that now have a different role and maybe different expectations, or a different career path? So kind of like managing the expectations and career paths for people that sometimes actually get included in things that are uncertain, and sometimes you feel going away from your line job can sometimes feel a little bit ambiguous and unsafe, while at the same time it's exciting. But is this something that needs very serious consideration when putting together agile teams? Tamás, your experience?
I think it does. And sorry, Fred, for stealing your, let's say, Brad, you're the HR guy at the end of the day. But really, what I think it was the biggest challenge for us to really come up with a model in terms of packaging, compensation, career paths for the guys. At the end of the day, it's a totally different, let's say, structure or career path, what you would normally expect in at a big company. You would expect to go up a step, then another step, then have bigger team, then even bigger team, then bigger ownership. And this was the usual way of getting a bigger package again. Now, in this agile, let's say, way of working or setup, to understand that we want to reward people based on their skills and the value that they generate is something completely different and basically needs to be rebuilt from scratch. But I think it's a real challenge both from HR and management perspective and also from a team member or employee perspective to really change the mindset and understand what it will bring.
Yeah, I think it's a very important consideration as well. It's just it's different expectations of teams. So we have about 3 minutes to go. I think it's been a really interesting session. I would like to thank you both very much for making time. Tamás, from your holiday, thank you again. And Fred, always thank you for your contributions. Thank you very much for the questions from the audience. Again, is there any closing words of wisdom that you would like to share before we wrap up, Fred or Tamás?
I always say the same. Done is better than perfect.
Exactly.
So keep this in mind. Yeah.
We'll make hats.
Yeah.
So thank you everybody once again. Check out empoweringagile.com. We are planning our next conference in Vienna on the 22nd of October. In the meantime, our virtual meetups will continue. So again, thank you all for joining. Thank you for your time. I wish everybody an extremely pleasant afternoon and truly hope that you've gotten some very interesting insider information from two really great companies and two really great senior level people from both of those companies that are taking on empowering agile within their organizations. So I thank you once again. Have a good evening and wish you all the best.
All the best.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Bye.